Hey everybody, it's Chris and Rick Talk Guitars, and we have a special edition today. We are talking to Trevor Boone from Emerald
Hey.
City Guitars, and he is an old friend, and he's been up to so much since Chris and I have talked to him. It's going to be a great conversation. But anyway, Trevor, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. I'm sitting at the round table of ECG alumni, man. It's
I know,
like
right?
we were like trying to hold ourselves back as soon as Rick and I signed in. We're like, what am I getting? Like so much. I've known you guys since I was 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Where do we begin?
Well,
It's
and
like,
Chris and I always joke about all roads lead to Emerald City Guitars. So it's cool again to talk about, to touch base with that touchstone and with you, who's just become such an integral part of that whole process. But, well, first of all, congratulations on your new daughter, Lucy.
whoo, that's the most heavy metal rock and roll thing I've done.
How does it feel to be a dad, man?
Dude, it's awesome. I just turned 35 and I was raised by wolves and continued like the kind of the rock and roll lifestyle for a long time. So I'm not feeling like I left anything behind. I'm like,
Right on.
we were ready,
Yeah.
Lauren, my wife. We've known each other since we were 6 or 7. We went to
Oh, dude,
a
that's so
picture of
cool.
us in kindergarten together. And man, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of balance, but it's cool being able to kind of weave both things and just trying to keep it between the lines and water both gardens.
I love it, dude. Well, talk about you've been up to so much. Let's just start with the long form content you guys have been creating for the shop. I really dig it. And you guys delve into the stories behind the gear that you find. Chris, what
Oh,
Chris
I have a
wants to chime
question.
in. Yeah.
Would it be cool just to set up for the listeners what Trevor does?
Yeah, actually that's a good
Just
idea.
so someone listening would just know, like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, I've been crawling around guitar stores, and I think I went to my first guitar shows when I was like 6, and I remember the days the doors opened, all that early stuff, and fast forward, now whatever 20 something years, almost 30 years I've been doing this, but
Insane.
wear a lot of hats, as everybody kind of has to do in that ecosystem of a small business or shop, but I really focus on, it's almost like A&R for record label, like a lot of like relations with these collectors, with these bands. And I specialize in kind of selling the top tier stuff.
That's cool.
I don't hate selling other stuff. I love the funky, cheap guitars, the three-legged dogs, but man, I want to go after the crazy shit that I've been reading about my whole life,
That's
and looking
cool.
at pictures and all that. So I've really kind of focused on that stuff. And you guys know the operation. Nobody's on commission. It's all like
Yeah.
finding stuff. We want people to be freaking stoked. So it's finding the coolest guitars for guys. Collectors are playing, figuring out what they want, basically curating their collections, maintaining their collections, appraisals, hunting, finding, obviously running the shop now. When we do the content, I manage all that. So it's a lot, but I like to do a little bit of everything. But really what keeps like the doors open and where I'm best put is like, boom, on the road, hunting and digging for cool shit,
Yeah. That's so cool, dude.
But totally credit my staff and my old man. It's a total team effort, and I wouldn't be able to do any of the cool, kind of fun, showy stuff without an amazing team behind me.
Did it kind of happen organically, or is it something you and the old man kind of discussed as you became older and more interested in, like you said, like finding that stuff?
That's a good question. My earliest memories were being just a punk ass kid at the guitar shop, sitting on a stool,
Me
like,
too.
and getting learning what to do, what not to do. Honestly, listening to artists, guys like Terry Terrell, I listened a lot to what was going on, what was cool, what attracted them, what not to play in a guitar shop, what licks are, when to stop
stairway.
playing. And so I had a lot of years of just kind of intake and absorbing a lot. But I always, back in the day, I think the most expensive guitar we had, I remember hearing about an $8,000 gold top. And you're just like, oh, what's that about?
Yeah.
And so there's always fun finding guitars and the right matches and stuff. But shit, it's cool when you're dealing with a burst or a Dumble or a one owner 56 Strat. And that was the cool stuff to get, the cool stuff to transact. And I really started going after that with kind of the integrity of a small shop started from nothing. Before my dad opened the door, it was like, you know, his story.
I remember, man.
We were on food stamps, you know, so
Yeah.
there was like the glitter of kind of high gear. It was just cool, man. I was
Yeah.
into it. So I kind of chased that and obsessed about it and went after it at an early age, you know.
I love that, dude.
Well, could you describe a recent road trip guitar procurement? I can't say that word, but a road trip recently that you've done and give people an idea of the sort of thing that you do to get these guitars?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Because I've seen pictures and it looks really cool.
Yeah, man. I really will chase any lead, you know, no stone left unturned kind of thing. For example, there's kind of two ways. There's a lot of stuff that like I'm just going off and doing by myself. And there's stuff we choose to kind of document, you know, as these long stories. But there's kind of two versions, three of our YouTube channel. It's like we have demos every day. That's just kind of like, we're going to try to represent the guitar, quick talk. In 2020, I didn't know what the hell was going on, dude. We were like, I was the only one going down the shop. I didn't want my old man going down. We were like, what? We're going to die? Like, what's going on? So I would go down there solo and pack up guitars, answer emails. And we kind of like, we did like the appointment only, which gave us a lot more control of stuff, eventually freeing me up enough to be like, hey, like the next couple of days, why don't you come on the road with me and bring a camera? You know, let's see how this goes. I just felt like, man, everything's kind of on pause. How are people going to see our guitars? How are we going to get guitars? Are people coming down to the shop? So I kind of pivoted things to like, one thing I know is going up is content. So I started taking Ken up on these trips, and they were anything from finding guitars in the whole, you know, from getting to the airport to digging to hanging with the family, diving into the story and bringing them back, and more of a history thing. So we did a lot of that. Then we do the Guitar V, where we bought a used RV and go around the country, and it's absolutely insane. You know, we put like 12 days into a 17-minute video. It's just crazy, you know? So the idea of that is just to kind of like, I really did feel like our operation is unique. I go to every guitar shop, I see everything. And I just felt like we had something special. And at the very least, it was honestly, you know, Rick, you and I did, all of us talk about, oh, remember this, remember that. And you're just kind of going, I was like, man, let's bring a camera and kind of like, because you're kind of collecting people too, in a way, like these, and those that sticks with you. And I wanted to show people that as well. So the videos are all over the place, man. They're centered around guitar, but it's really like the weird ass places you probably shouldn't be that into you to go find an old guitar. But then the amazing people behind it, and also how hard it is to kind of find some of this stuff. You know, I mean, when you get a guy who's like day one, it lists, and he wants, you know, wants it for cost. You know, dude, no, I like, right. look what I was on for 12 days, you know, planes, trains, and automobiles, trying to find this thing and just kind of showing a little bit of effort on all parts.
I love it because it sounds like, again, it happened organically, right? You're trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to make this work during the pandemic and all the shit that's going down there?
Well, Ken, like I've known Ken since we were kids.
That's so cool.
I worked at Guitar Center with him. I was like 18. I'd already been working at a shop. I was like, just like, you know, sweating from the mouth, selling everything. So, you know, who is this kid? He's 18. And Ken started working there, and he was in pro audio. And I was really, you know, I worked in studios for a long time too, built a studio, like full on deal. And Ken was like a total techie head. So I was always calling him, hey, what do I do? What should I do with that? I knew he was wired like that. And he eventually kind of got into video. When he first got a camera, he called the shop and was like, can I come down and film? And, you know, we're like, yeah, next Tuesday.
That's cool.
Then we totally forgot that, you know how it goes down there, you know, grand plans and the door opens. So Ken started coming down. We totally forgot, and we didn't help him out, you know, no help to him. We just like walked around and filmed the chaos. So those early days of reality of the ECG, that was just like, they're insane, dude. They're like the Office. So flash forward 10 plus years later, when I was just kind of going, what's next? You know, it's like, dude, content. People aren't going to want less. It's not going backwards. And it was a big move to take him on. And it's been amazing. I mean, it really helped us, gave us another avenue for sales and representation during COVID when you couldn't come to the shop or hear that guitar.
Yeah.
But then this whole other side of taking them on travel, super organic, super natural. And it's just become a cool thing, man. We love it. We still love doing it, and that's the important thing.
The thing that I dig about it is we all, all guitar players talk about the stories behind the guitars and, all the history and all that stuff. But I love the fact that you talk to the people and the stories behind the gear that you find. And those stories are so compelling and so moving to me. Like I remember watching that one where that woman's husband died and he was in that band called Peanut Butter or something, or it's crazy shit. And he had this cool gear that was in great condition and she wanted it to go to the right place. And talk about like how you form relationships with these people and gain their trust and build relationships with people through this gear.
It's like, I mean, that's how I was raised. That's what I watched from observation. My old man, just like, I mean, he's my hero, and I've seen how he treats people, and that's just how I operate.
I love it.
And these are such intimate items, guitars. I mean, there's so much there that is equally important as the instrument. It makes instruments cooler. It can make them worse. That Christie thing, there was something weird happening when we first started doing these, and we'd show up to these places and I'd always kind of stop and like when we're in the Uber, it's just like take a moment and be like, all right, this is not about me, and it's like, I'm so lucky to be able to do this. This is not about me. Let's just take a moment, like almost meditate on like what we're walking into and just stay open to it all. And we would do that every time. And weird shit would happen. Like that Christie thing. Oh, man. I mean, that was a real trip, man. And just like a brief summary of that whole deal. I had got this number of this gal. She'd been talking to everybody, all the big shops, and guys were blowing her off left and right. And she had a good offer locally from this guy who I know who it is. He's awesome, dude. And it was this really cool, seamless thing. It was her husband who was in a band for a long time, and he had passed away and had left these cool pieces. So we ended up getting out there in Arizona, and I ended up finding the old band members. She hadn't even met them and got them all together, which was crazy. And we do this whole deal. We're singing the records. We're listening to the guitar. we put together this party. I interview her, how these things work too. Is Ken's running the camera, and I just kind of sit like this. I'm like, just talk to me and I'll ask questions. And it's totally, I have nothing scripted. We're just talking like this.
That's so cool.
She goes, tomorrow will be 4 years since he passed away. We don't have family, so we never had a memorial. And there's never really closure for her husband's death. And she just was like, hearing his instruments, she made friends with the band members. Why? It just was like, dude, it's so cool. So much bigger than I am.
Yeah.
These things kept on happening, and they still continue to. You just kind of shut up and listen. And so I get into that shit,
Yeah, I know, dude.
I think these people kind of realize a few minutes in, like, whoa, what's going on here? But that whole deal, man, is just like, it's absolutely crazy. When like if you ever do a vacation or something with like other people or and it's one thing when people get separate hotel rooms, but when you're stuck in a house, it's all everybody comes out kind of looking like each other. And now we're like, man, that was the way to do it. We dreamt, we've done all the Hertz, the U-Hauls, the every freaking way you can think about getting guitars across the country and all this crap. And we always had this dream, like, well, man, maybe we should just get an RV, and I don't know if it's paid for itself or what, but you save up hotels and all this shit. But it's like those days are just, you go from freaking 100-mile-per-hour LA crazy shit to all of a sudden on the top of, up in the hills of Ashland, Oregon, where
there's the monetary shit, but there's the stuff you just talked about that you probably hadn't anticipated, like you becoming so much. I mean, you and your dad are close anyway, but just the relationships you form with your dad that become stronger, and probably with the other people, you probably get on each other's nerves and shit. But after the dust settles, you're like, fuck, I'm tons closer now to all these people than I was before. And we've got all these stories among us. And I just think that's so fucking cool, dude.
It's cool, man. And we come back like, and again, I credit just, this is what I saw and was raised on about how to treat people, how to do this. Like, I know this business freaking inside and out. Like every trip, there's something we collectively come back when we are dropping into Seattle, and you're just going, we did something good.
Yeah.
Like I said, 90% of these people don't want to be on camera and stuff like that. But dude, there's hard conversations. There's tough goodbyes. As soon as we lose that, that's when it's like, it's over. But for right now, man, something's working here, and this is special,
I love it.
What's your favorite guitar that you got last year?
Let's see. God, those are the hardest questions. Like what's the craziest guy? I'm like, what day, dude? Like 10 to it's insane. But guitar wise, one that I really thought was cool that really wasn't like a massive video, but it was just kind of like we did a video and it was in our backyard. But this guy had his dad's 1954 Les Paul Gold Top and matching amp, mint condition. And we got a call because he woke up, like this is like a few days after this happened, but he calls and he wakes up one morning and his whole man cave is on fire. Like
holy shit.
Chicken wire fence or something. He had taken that guitar like out of the man cave that night. So we went over to this place in Washington. It was a couple hours away. And these people were so freaking cool. Him and his wife both played music together. She's like an old folk musician. She had a couple of cool Martins. They're like mid 70s. It was like this whole thing about, you almost lost something that we ended up digging into, like, God, this thing is so, his dad played in polka bands and cherished his guitar. A beautiful story that it almost never had a story. And just kind of a reminder of like things like that. Like, God, it would have been such a shame. And that's how you lose a couple, why things go up in value. Dude. But it turned out to be a cool story, iconic guitar, an hour away from where we are in this funky little town. And it was just like barely safe from everything in this. The man cave was burnt to a crisp. They lost 2 fixes. And there's this cool picture after we're leaving with a mint gold top and this little amp. And we took a picture of it, just like freaking rubble of ash and a beautiful gold top. And it's like, man, this guy's going to be living, this one's going to be living a little longer, which is cool.
How long did that guitar last before someone snagged it? Did you have someone in mind when you?
Oftentimes, generally, like you kind of know which ones are going to sell immediately. And a 54 gold top is so freaking cool, but they're not like a burst or a 59 Strat. They're kind of like, they're not a 57 gold top. They're not. So it went at the right time, and we also weren't like, when we get these, it's like, it's kind of bittersweet. Like sometimes they sell so quick. You're like, why do we do that? Yeah. It's kind of like having like an elephant in the zoo, having a guitar like that in the showcase. So, when we get something like that and we don't even list it, we just kind of hover around it and absorb it for a little bit. And it's funny. The guy who bought that, Joey, my younger brother, actually took a call. A guy bought that and another one that we had. So 254 Les Pauls got a package of. Must be nice, but
spare, yeah.
But I don't know, man. I mean, custom colors, old Martins, bursts, all that stuff. I mean, those are all. There's a line between like the price tag, because that's attractive, and like this story. Oh my God, $1 million guitar! But God, sometimes I mean the stories are just insane. There's a 57 Junior Les Paul Junior that we picked up in Oregon maybe 3 months ago. And, $10,000 guitar, $15,000 guitar, something like that. But dude, the story, it was this guy's grandpa, and, his grandpa is the coolest looking dude you've ever seen. Just slick back pomp, the coolest jackets, on his knees, doing the duck walk with his 57 Junior. And then the story goes deeper. Like when his grandpa got it, his mom walked him into a guitar shop. So his grandpa's mom walked him in and had to sign the loan to buy it because he was underage. And she ended up drowning 3 days later. So this guitar is not only precious to his music career, this was like something that him and his mom did. And we had the receipt with her name signed on it. I mean, you could tell this guy cherished it for his entire life. He kept it until he passed away, gave it to the grandson. And obviously you go, oh, why? You should have kept it in the family. That's what everybody says. Right. Man, people don't know shit. Like you got to on with your family. Nobody's playing it. He's respected. Love it. It's time to move something like that on. Like and we eventually found a really cool home for it, but it just kept on getting deeper and deeper. Yeah. It wasn't a crazy expensive guitar, but
no, but that's the cool thing. I mean, dude, I think it's so, to hear you talk, it's just cool that when you were young, you kind of got bit by the bug of all these cool old guitars, and that was kind of in your sights, that you wanted to do that, and you've achieved that. But, as guitar players, we all know the cool thing about all this gear is the stories behind it, man. You crack that case open, you can smell the clubs, you can smell the history, you can smell the must and the mold and shit. For me, like the content you guys create, that's what it resonates so powerfully is you guys are just salt of the earth, cool people who come from a human place. You're just good humans. And then you're passionate about this gear. And so that comes across. And like I said, I mean, I've been moved almost to tears at some of these stories. It's just watching them, and it's just it's fucking amazing, dude.
Thank
but
you.
A question I had, I don't know, switching gears a little bit, but you talked about how competitive it is. How competitive is it now? Because it is the vintage market's huge, and we all know there's tons of shops around. But how competitive is it for you guys? And like, how much of an edge is it too that you guys have such a good rep in terms of being such cool people to work with?
It's a great question. So, when COVID happened, everybody and their grandma has a guitar shop now. They order some T-shirts, fancy, and I've been hunting guitars grassroots forever, and word of mouth in the right circles, and I truly feel like we're in our own thing. I honestly feel like we run the coolest shop in the world, man. I've been to all of them. Like, where our heart's at, I know.
Yeah.
And I kind of like, I like going a little bit under the radar. Obviously, wherever, like, our optics are big, but a lot of our big clients, dude, they're sensitive clientele. So I can't say, blah, blah, just bought this. Dude, like I said, I've been doing this so freaking long. I've seen all the mistakes that everybody's made. And everybody makes mistakes. I stay in my own lane, man. And I feel like everybody can eat, if you get tired, dude. You're trying to be a gatekeeper. I love that. And it's really not good for anybody. If that guy's selling a bunch of guitars, that's good for me, man. I want them to be hot. Like, I want guitars to be excited. I feel like these younger guys are strong advocates. One thing that's been interesting to see over the last couple of years is kind of the change of the guard. If I was 18 years old selling like a burst and shit, which is kind of crazy at the time, these guys were going, wow, okay. Then all of a sudden, 35, I've absorbed a lot of their clients. All of a sudden, these older, it pisses some of these shops off, and I just, again, I try to just like, dude, I try to respect the oracles, even if they're can be up to date. But it's funny because I'm seeing a lot of these guys who are on their way out, these historical shops that, my old man started this funky little shop in 96. It stayed in the family, have taken over this deal. And with that same heart, a lot of these dudes don't have that. They're not, don't have a piece of them that can carry this on. So they're kind of going, I can sell this much shit for this much. 5 years, I'm out and nothing's coming back to me. For me, I got to vouch for every guitar because I'm going to be doing this until I drop dead. So I'll see that guitar again, and it better it was like I'm also just I'm like over kind of an emotional guy, and I get invested in things. And if I do wrong by somebody, or I think something's just I won't be able to sleep, dude. I'm just like my mom's like that. She's worried about something. Can't sleep for a week. I feel like there's this younger generation who have jumped into it. Some of them get it, some of them don't.
Yeah.
It's all groovy. Everybody can get a little taste of it. But as far as like competition, dude, I just try to change that word to me a little bit. Like, obviously it kind of, keeps your edge going, but it's not all about me, and I gotta also respect everybody else who's kind of in this industry. So but there's times, you want to sell a guy a guitar. And you just show you got this. You're like, God damn. But you can't dwell on that shit, dude. It's just like, let's move on. Next one.
Exactly. What were you going to say, Chris?
There's this rumbling of like the end of the guitar market being in sight now. They say, well, like you mentioned, the old guard. And I've heard people say that once these old guard people go, it's going to the market is going to go away. I don't believe that at all. But I wanted to get but I think guitars are like records or something. There's something they're always going to be.
I've heard great question. Thank you, Chris. Because I mean, that's like, there's people who collect thimbles, dude. Like everybody collects something. I'm telling you, I've got guitars. I'm going, why did I buy this? You listed up and some dude in Turkey bought it at 3 a.m.
You found the guy.
I'm growing up with a younger generation, dude. And people go, how are they going to afford these things? No, dude, no 18-year-old's going to put like $100,000 down on a guitar. But what happens, and what happened to me, were my first real nice guitar, I accumulated 3 tape echoes, this, that, a Dr. Z head. You cash all your chips in, lose a little bit of money, but then get this one amazing guitar, then you're in the game, then it just kind of goes off. So there's always a market. Again, I'm 35, dude. I've seen all these kids who are kicking around with Digitech stuff and now they're all of a sudden getting their first like 70 Strat, pre-CBS. So no, I don't think it's done. I think people really underestimate the market. And from behind the curtain, dude, it's like everywhere, global. There's people are into this stuff, dude. And again, it's also that's part of this whole video thing is I also feel a responsibility to like continue that and show people why these are so cool. Last bit on that, because I think it's an important thing too. I saw a lot of guys go, oh, wait till I'm not buying anything. The recession's about to hit and there's going to be a lot of stuff coming up. Let me explain something. And this is my theory on that. And I'm into a lot of different cool collectibles and they're all parallel. What I've found with guitars, I'm trying to say this how to make sense too. Here's the deal. Back in 2007 or something like that, when shit kind of hit the fan in the economy, dude, you saw guys bringing stuff in. Like you saw guys bringing, I'm going to have to sell this 60 Strat that I've had for a long time. But it was also like 12 grand or something like that back then. This time around, a lot of those have gone into a different demographic. They're not pulling their Strat out to have to sell it if it's a bad day in the market. It's like these guitars, they're in a different place. They're worth a hell of a lot more money. And those guys, like, they're in a world where they're not like, shit, I got to pay the lighting bill. I just don't think that's really going to occur.
Well, along these lines, I mean, I love talking about this stuff because Chris and I talk about this all the time. But the thing that always fascinates me as an older guy who is a guitar player and who loves all of these old guitars and old stuff, even cars and stuff, I keep wondering about a paradigm shift that might take place where younger players aren't as infatuated with all these old guitars and stuff. And so to me, I would love to hear your take on that in terms of a paradigm shift of that, right? Where just a younger generations of players, it's like, no, I bought a new Strat and it's cool. And I play through a newer reissue deluxe or whatever. And I'm fine. But being down at the shop, I will say I have seen young bands come in. There was this young band from Canada that came in, all young cats in their 20s. And they were like kids in a candy store. They wanted to play all the old shit and they loved it.
Yeah.
But so in my mind, I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? What's your take on that shit?
Dude, I think you had the same idiots buying shitty guitars in the 90s and 80s. No, I mean, you either get it or you don't, and
but do you think young players will still?
Well, here's the thing, man, because we've talked about this too. We're going, man, all the 80s shredder guitars going to be the next burst.
Right. Oh, yeah, right.
You can think about like that kind of thing on like, it's a fun thought until you have the two guitars in your hand.
Yeah.
I love the cool 80s guitars. And you're like, okay, like it's fun because the colors and it's kind of this butt rocky, dripping in hairspray thing. If you look at an old Gibson 335, I mean, even if you go, I like the sound of that's great. You're wrong. Like, I don't want to sound like a snob, but you want as much of you to come through these guitars. So there's something that happens in these vintage guitars up until like 65 or whatever. When you play a big, a 335 with PAFs, like, there's a lot going on. Semi-hollow body, big guitar. But dude, it's like if you're playing through an amp, it is a tattletale. You're going to hear everything. There was a time where the old wood, the correct alloys, the component drift, exposed to whatever elements, they just get raw and raw. It's more of you, man. If the guitar's made from wood, I'm sorry, but older wood is just going to do more. You're talking about these old Les Paul stuff. That's old growth wood, meaning never logged. So it could be hundreds and hundreds of years old. There's a thing there versus a new guitar. I think they cut them off around 38 years is where you kind of want to cut down a tree. If you put a 2x4 from an old growth 2x4 out in your yard and a new piece of wood out in your yard and it rains, one's going to look like a boomerang the next day. And one is just, there's a thing that you're going to get more out of you. There's more swirl going on. If you don't give a shit about that stuff, whatever, that's fine. That's where you either get it or you don't. And luckily there's a lot of guys who get it,
Yeah. Right. I mean, where technology is right now, a lot of people tend to watch video, like YouTube video shootouts. You have to be plugged in and in the presence of an instrument like that to get it. You know what I mean? So you really can't blame a lot of people for not getting it, but dude, it's such a different thing. Right. And people will say, well, the audience can't tell. And I'm always like, I don't give a fuck. I mean, that's great that they can't tell, but it doesn't matter. I'm hooked into this thing. I'm playing this thing. It's pulling something out of me.
Does it inspire you, right?
Yeah, whatever it is. And that is, old instruments have that in spades. Some of them really do, And sometimes we have to settle for, like I have to settle for like reissues, but you find one that has that vibe a little bit and it gets you there. And that's,
So that I agree with you right there too. Like there are old guitars that just don't really have the thing. And there's new guitars. You're like, this has got it going on. I mean, that's totally, you have probably a better shot some older guitars in general than like, whatever you take it out of a box. But it really comes down to, dude, like you're playing music with it. Does it inspire you? We just had this conversation on the RV. I brought this. I have a reissue J45. I always wanted a J45. I can't find a lefty vintage one. I bought a reissue. Lefty came in and it sounds so good, dude. Like it sounds like a Nashville record. And I'm like, listen to it. It's great for live. Dude, I've spent weeks on the road with that guitar, and I'll tell you all day, it does not inspire me. Like, I have a modern D28 here. I'll never sell it. It's very sentimental to me, the story behind it. It does the dreadnought thing great. It doesn't inspire me. Like, give me 1 second. You can come in. Right. Laura's getting home. And so that's a thing too, man, is like, if you really are just looking for something to ring your bell, and do something.
Well, I like the way you put it. You want as much of yourself to come through the instrument as possible. And these old instruments provide that pathway, essentially. And Chris and I talk about that all the time. It's about feel. And I think it does translate to the audience, right? Because if I'm on stage and I'm not feeling it with my shit, they're going to sense that. So all of that shit is connected, man. And so if I'm inspired and I'm playing gear that I love and that I can communicate with, the audience knows it immediately.
Well, it's like the whole believe the singer. You need to believe
exactly.
You need to believe the guitarist too. And Rick, I think that is like such a paramount thing that you just said right there, because I have a story. I probably won't bore it, but on that context, it's like, are you going to notice those PAFs in this big video? Most people not. I mean, right. I can, but my wife's not going to give a shit about that. Right. But like you said, you back it up. And how does that, when you're playing, you go like that.
Yes.
All of a sudden he's feeling like that. You're feeling like that. We feel like that. Totally, totally important.
Yeah. That's right. Because if we did base our choice in gear on what the audience could tell the difference of, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't play anymore.
No, exactly.
I mean, it's kind of a pointless thing, and that's what I was getting at. Is technology is not very helpful a lot of times, and this was another question that I have.
Heck out of art, man.
Yeah, it's because you mentioned the way that you got into this, and it was very similar to the way that I got into it. Like just being just total nerd, reading everything I could, and just obsessing over these details. And one thing that was really fascinating for me when I started down at Emerald City was actually getting to see some of this stuff after just reading about it. Yep. And the first thing, some of these myths start to fall away. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like people will say things, and some things, you just get to formulate your own view of the vintage guitars. One of the things that's super annoying right now is the whole relic thing and why what these guitars are starting to look like. And it's like, I've seen so many 50 Stratocasters, none of them look like that. You know what I mean? There's got wear in the right spots. You can tell it's real.
It's like it's like the jeans they give. They have pre-ripped jeans. And
exactly.
You have a little crotch seconds. I mean, come on, man. But I mean, on that topic, like you're saying, you're like one of those guys on the forums going, it doesn't sound as good as my 2001. It's like, sometimes those guys will go into a guitar shop in buttfuck nowhere and pick up a neglected, a guitar with no old strings, actions higher than them. And they're going, God, these vintage guitars suck. It's like, no, dude, you got come down. I just scored a lefty pre-CBS Strat. Then I had a really good remake or kind of a relic by Eric Daw, one of my favorite people in the world. An amazing builder, luthier. He built me a lefty Strat, kind of a pre-CBS Strat. And man, it would kill everything. And I got a real Strat, a real 63. And I sat at home. It was when I was before we moved into our house and we were renting this apartment. I didn't have an amp in there. And I played this Strat unplugged for 3 weeks. And I was just going, oh my God. Like it kept on. So for somebody to walk into a shop for 30 seconds, maybe they plug you into a little like solid state custom with a fucked up old, 1979 Volute neck 345. Like that's not doing it. What you got to get those guitars dialed in, and it's like the living word or something. It continues to be appreciated. I've been humbled. I just was with this Strat. I just went, like, I got it and I can flip them upside down and play righty pretty good. But when I had it and I just sat there, and it was just like, what the hell, man? I did a similar thing at that same apartment. I found this one owner, 1943 D28. So a $100,000 guitar. I picked it up on New Year's Day with my wife, and I brought it home, and I just tuned it up at the house, and I just played an E chord over and over until you witness it and feel it. And it's like every follicle of your body is like, it rattles, dude. It's a thing. It is real, people, all the myths, all the forum trolls, all the shit, say what you freaking want until you can give something a fair shot, and some people aren't. It's hard to do that. I get it. I'm happy to show people that if they want to come down and go, tell me, show me what. I love doing that.
No, it's so funny that you mentioned that about that Martin, because I think it was the only time that I actually played a pre-war Martin. I don't remember what year it was, but it was a D18, and I was up working upstairs, and it was either you or somebody handed me it because they were photographing it. And the same thing, I think I hit an A chord, and I was like, oh my fucking God. It was like a piano or something. It's right. Yes. It's like everything was so alive. I have a D18 now. It's like, I think from the 90s, and it's a good guitar and stuff, but it's like, there's no way. It's not that at all. I mean, maybe so I'm not going to live long enough for it to be like that, but plus it's not built the same way. But
one of my first real guitars, I traded 5 shitty guitars and mowed a bunch of lawn, was a 88 Les Paul Custom with a broken headstock. I could jam. I thought it was the coolest thing ever until I realized it wasn't that great.
Right.
But I sold it, and I was like, I'm going to get an R9 someday. I looked around for R9s, but dude, I'd heard what Les Pauls can do. And I was like, I'm still looking. I just bought an R9 like a couple years ago. I played it once, dude, because it's cool. It does it. But I'm like, I think there's ways I could mod this and kind of get there, but I haven't touched it. And just off the factory, it's a high quality R9. And it's good, but I've kind of been like, I've played the real thing, and I'm going, I want it to do that. It's tough,
On this topic, kind of like the thing that came into my mind too, as you're talking about there's so much, because sometimes I vacillate between like, how much am I fetishizing these instruments and how much is my own, romantic idea of them and stuff. But the more I think about it, and the more we all talk about it, and we pick them up and we play them and we see them, there's so much about these instruments that makes it all a real thing. Like you're saying, like it's the wood, it's the way they were built, it's the factories that they were built in, it's the way they did all this shit and put these instruments together that make them so special. And the cool thing about buying these guitars is you're not just buying this item, you're buying the whole baggage that came with this before you bought it. Like that, I bought that Antigua Strat from your dad many years ago when he worked at Stevens Stringed Instruments, and it's a 70s Strat that people piss on all the time, but it's a cool fucking guitar. And it's got a cool story about it. And I play that thing all the time. And it's like, so that's part of the fun part about it too, is just all the baggage you get when you buy this used instrument that you can just enjoy. And anyway.
Well, with that, I mean, a 60 or a 50 Stratocaster is very different from a 60s Stratocaster, in my opinion. And a 70s Stratocaster, although it's not in the league of those things, it's different, and it has its own vibe.
And everybody, the 60s guys shit on the 50s.
Yeah, exactly, dude. The 70s.
Everybody likes to shit.
Totally. It's like, but I for the longest time, I only could find, like, when I was down there, the only guitar Strats that ever spoke to me were 70 Strats for some reason. And it was this weird thing where, because I'm like such a bridge pickup guy, but the Strats that I liked, there was very little difference when you switch the switch. They all had this sound. It's like this 70s, it must be ceramic pickups. I don't know what it was, but it sounded cool. It's like, I like that sound. Now I think I would probably appreciate the 60s ones better, and then the 50s as well, but it was weird. What I'm saying is there is a vibe to those 70 Strats. So I could see somebody collecting them and like, I want a good one of those, because there are good ones of those, right?
Yeah.
And they're affordable, semi-affordable too.
76 Strat for a long time.
Yeah.
I had to sell it to get something I wanted. It had so much vibe, dude. And I always I fought the pickups a little bit. This one was the right weight, black, big headstock, maple board, looked freaking great. You loved playing it, but it had the 70s pickups, a little bright, offensive, and I would have, if I had it now, I would have switched out the bridge or something like that. But no doubt, it was a freaking awesome guitar. I'd pick up that guitar over, it's imperfections are what draw us to love something.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's why a PRS, it's great. It's like a Tesla. You're going to get to A to B, but if your old pickup truck, A to B is a hell of a lot more fun. And I found like with those instruments, I mean, old wood, hide glue, nitrocellulose versus polyurethane, which blankets everything. You're taking all these, the porous wood and filling all these holes, putting a pillow over with nitro is just like, I mean, and again, that also parallels my take on just you're getting more of yourself out of something, the more plastic and hyper, super, super gainy pickups and this, it's like, guys hear a loud guitar and loud translates to good sometimes. And what's the pickups read? I get that question all the time. And sometimes I just want to shut up. Like it just it sounds, it does more because it's not tapped out on volume. And it's like, dude, there's so much. And to each their own, dude. I don't hate on guys who love the PRSs, but you're going to sound like you're playing a PRS every time because they're perfect.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. You don't want to hear some guy singing the blues, playing the blues on a freaking brand new Tesla. It's like you want to kind of hear the guy in an old Model T who's broke down the side of the road.
So I'm a stickler for nitro, like you said, like thin lacquer on guitars, but I don't, for some reason, I don't mind Fenders so much because, like I said, the 70 Strats, they were pretty heavy plastic.
Yeah, they're great though, but it's
the feel, and that's what some people, people will get into this whole argument. You can't hear the difference between Charlie, and maybe you can, but it's like, it definitely feels different. I mean, just in your hands.
I say like too, it really like, when you hand a guy who's plugged into a whatever amp and you go, here, try this from Burma, it's like, dude, that's such a cheap, like the string life. Where's that at? What's like, you're comparing two things for 30 seconds where truly these are gifts that keep on giving. The guitars that I've held on to, dude, I've played them like studio, sweaty clubs, bars, alone on the couch, unplugged. And I'm like, I still every time feel like I'm jumping into this old kind of bucket seat, and it's That's like so cool. It still is exciting to me and still inspires me. And some of these old guitars, they still have 100 million songs left in them.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they're not your songs, maybe they're the next guy. But it's like you feel something. We just want to feel alive, man. Come on.
Exactly. Dude, but I just hearing you talk, man, it makes me so happy because you're just checking all the boxes for me in terms of where you're coming from, man. Like you said, like, maybe there's 100 more songs that are not my songs, but some dude's going to get this guitar and go, and
maybe
write a bunch of cool shit or just enjoy it on his fucking couch or her couch or whatever it is. But I love it, man. And I love it. You just feel like you're a caretaker in this little span of time you have to enjoy this shit and help other people enjoy it. And I just love that, dude.
Guitars are gonna, most of them outlive us all.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I have two guitar, so brief too. I'm right-handed. I do everything right-handed except play guitar. It is cross-eyed bear. It is a light yoke on me. I try to use it. There's two things good with it. I'd be freaking chasing the rabbit nonstop. I'd be a gear freak. My wife would leave me because I'd be switching guitars and be financing the house. But I also give me this thing to like, I can appreciate them, I can play them, but I can't own them. You should own this. So I feel like I'm able to find right homes for them. But I have two guitars, man, that one's a lefty telly. It was my dream guitar. It's a lefty telly, one of like 3 or 4 ever made in 52. And then a 61 Strat that was sent to Washington State, only 2 hours from where I sit now in 1961. And I kind of I'm going, man, these guitars were made for me in 1950. Like they were supposed to be in my hands with me.
I love it, dude.
And at the same time, I go, I'm going to be bird food. I'm going to be dust. And these guitars are going to be, I hope they're in somebody's hands who's like, I don't, want them to be in a, they're gonna
glass case or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's cool what they will know and what they'll never know about my time with this guitar. Like the funky bars, whatever, almost getting stolen, almost going, being in a fire, sitting here and alone, waiting for, when my baby girl's born and strumming. Oh. It's just like, dude, there's in that same feeling that I have. I also know it's in every guitar in some sense. So I try to honor that, and keep an open mind to what's left in this thing.
Well, that's what I love about it is you'd become a part of the story of that guitar, man. And like you said, I mean, if even a fraction of your story gets told to the next owner, that's such a cool thing, right? Like, oh yeah, man, the guy that owned this thing.
A buddy of mine said something that I'd never heard before. I really liked it. He was walking through his guitar and we go, this one is this. He has a whole lineage and provenance. He goes, this one, I don't know anything about it. 1936 Martin. He goes, I almost think that's cooler.
That's true. Well, there's that part of it too. I mean, I love that too. I mean, I love that it just dropped out of the sky and I have no idea who owned it. I have no idea where it came from, but it's like,
it's been around a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now it gets to listen to me like stumble over Wooly Bully while I'm like, my face. Great.
Well, dude, we've kept you for an hour. We've only scratched the surface.
Dude, I might know.
Well, here's the deal. No, man, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this again because you're such a fun guy to talk to. And again, like I don't want to fucking belabor the shit, but your enthusiasm comes through in everything you do. I love your videos because that's what I get from you is like you're just psyched about this guitar and you want to share it with people. And I love that. And I love you anyway. I'm done fucking
you dudes are like
buttering your muffin, but
no, man. Let me butter y'all. Let me give you flowers.
Butter up, bitch.
I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to give flowers while we're alive now. Chris, dude, I mean, we have to do another one because there's so much show we didn't get into. Yams and the repair room.
Oh yeah.
Remember, I mean, dude, and Ricky,
we will, baby.
Ricky, you're a brother to me, dude. You're such a gifted guy.
I love you, buddy.
Everybody loves you, man. I appreciate both you guys so much. You guys are in my mind like the great oracles of like
the floating heads. All right, man. Thanks so much for listening. We are proud members of the Ruinous Media Network now, and check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we're going to do this again with Trevor, and keep listening.